What's up everybody, welcome to Kick Punch. Wanted to do a quick tutorial on posing your character entirely in Zbrush. So if you're interested in this, please drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. So the idea here is I want to be able to pose this character, right? But I also don't want to have to go back to full 3D software like a Maya or a Blender and have to retopologize and do all the skin weights and do all that, shenanigans, right? I just want to get a cool pose out of this character, and I want to do it as quickly and easily as possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch everything over to just to show you, like, we're going to use the Transpose tool to be able to achieve that. So I wanted to show you as well that there is a somewhat clean topology on this. Like, it's not clean by rigging standards, but it is a Z-remesh topology. So I literally just clicked a button and it remeshed it for me. And then I reprojected the detail back down onto the high-res subdivision level. So each one of these parts has a somewhat clean topology that we're going to use. And so we're going to start there, like the body, the torso, and the legs all have a somewhat clean topology. But for the accessories like the packs, the grenade, the watch, and the backpack, that's all just an ugly Dynamesh. And I'm going to leave that as is for now. So we're going to see if we can get away without having to retop that, because that might be a mess for the Z-remesher. And that's my take on that. So we are going to try to, in this part, like, I'm just trying to get it, the top stuff, like the torso level accessories, are all going to be in one poly group, and then the bottom belt accessories are going to be in another poly group, so we have, a good isolation, control over those. So that's kind of what I'm trying to achieve here. Just using the mask lasso, and as you probably already learned, this isn't for like an absolute beginner. This is a more intermediate to mid-level tutorial for people that kind of know their way around ZBrush. So I'm just making this all one poly group right here, and then inverting that selection, and then making this all one poly group here, and hoping that's going to carry into Transpose Master when we switch over. So they should all be good to go now. So now I'm going to save and then version up to another pose. I think I call it like machine gunner marine rifleman pose character, and then switching over to T pose Transpose Master. So I just click on the one button on the left to switch to Transpose Master, and it's going to take all the low res meshes in each one of the subtools and stick it into one subtool in a new tool, if that makes any sense at all. But you'll see how it works. And it can take a little while depending on how many parts there are and what the poly count is. It can take a minute. So now we switch over to a new subtool, and it's obviously it only uses the lowest subdivision level possible to do this, which is exactly what we want. It's going to make our lives easier to work on the low res mesh. So you can see it looks like our accessory poly groups didn't maintain, so we'll have to split that out later on if we want those to be able to rotate or move independently, and we might not have to do it at all. So I think I decided I'm going to end up starting with the legs and getting those into position properly, and this is kind of the reference image that I found for that pose. So nice wide solid stance for a standing pose, and I start with this. You can also, just showing, you can use the see-through overlay up top to kind of see through to your reference on occasion when you need to, or just use it like on a separate monitor. So Control Shift left click and getting the base out of there, getting everything that I don't need out of, just hiding that stuff, so I don't need to manipulate any of that. I just want the legs in view. And then I botched that. had to rehide that. So here, this is just showing how we have the advantages of the topology here, is we can actually click and left click and drag with the transform gizmo along the topology, and because there's a somewhat clean topology, it'll kind of follow along. And in fact, I didn't even use that method here. I guess I used a mask lasso, so that point was pointless. But I got the legs masked out, and then I'm going to draw the transform along the hip down to like the ankle and kind of get that position so you can see how I rotate it into place. And you can use this or the new transform gizmo, but if you click that button again, it'll give you the legacy transform gizmo, which is what I like to use to pose with. I guess I'm just old school. So then it's just a matter of clicking and dragging where you want the joint to go, and you can see that you can rotate that now and have total control over that based off of where you've masked. So I'm going to undo that and then drag the joints to the center, along the center of the leg. And now I am good to rotate out at the bottom. So we're going to give him that nice wide stance. So now I'm just isolating the feet and rotating those back in so they are flat. And then turning, I think I'm going to turn off symmetry and then pivot that foot out a little bit more. So you click that inner circle, the second circle down, and the little white circle in the middle of that, it'll allow you to rotate on that axis. So now I think I've got the legs in a good position here, and I'm just going to move them. Might be actually rotating this whole thing. Just expressing like how you can lock this gizmo by unlocking that, and you can reset your orientation of the gizmo there just by clicking that as long as it's unlocked. If it is locked, then it will move your geo, so you got to be careful with that. And then I'm just like rotating the feet out just a little bit. Now the hard work begins, so now we get to figure out how to pose the arms and the fingers and all that goodness. But I think I start with the head. Alright, so I'm just going to lasso the head around the neck area and then blur the mask by control left clicking and tapping. Invert my selection by control left click tap outside of the geo, and now I have like isolated the head and the neck, and just drawing that joint again and then rotating to the side. Accidentally scaled, so I had to undo that. And then that inner white circle right there is money, is where you want to be, so you just click on that guy and it'll rotate on the y-axis like that, like so. Turning his head just a little bit and then trying to get him to duck down just a smidge, get behind those sights. And then I think I decided that it's probably best to get the gun in place so I can determine how to move his body around the gun. So I isolate the gun and then rotate that up and translate that into position first. And I do have to scale it down a little bit because it's a tad large. Just kind of resting that right in the crook of the arm there, right in the armpit area. And then leaning, I'm going to have him lean forward, so I kind of just brought the gun forward just a little bit. And then from here, it's just a matter of like isolating the arms and getting those to be just those visible so that we can isolate those parts and just work on those individually. So now we've got just the parts that we want to work with visible, and I'm just masking and feathering the mask on the arm a little bit, and then I'm going to redraw out that joint. Again, just checking out my references, elbows pointing straight down to the ground, so I'm going to try to achieve that look. So rotating it down. I'm not entirely sure if in World War II they had that kind of a position in their dogma, in their firing position. I feel like they kind of were doing what's more called like a chicken wing, where they were pointing the elbows like straight out towards the wall. I think this pointing the elbows down is kind of a newer pose, but I could totally be wrong. If there's any scholars out there, please check me in the comments below. So I'm just grabbing at the elbow and just getting that pointed. And keep in mind, there's always going to be cleanup with this, you know, like it's super rounded right there. So we'll have to go back with the snake hook brush or move tool and kind of touch up the elbow and give it that nice point to that structure of the bone, kind of pointing. There's always going to be work to be needed after posing, just with cleanup. Not entirely sure what I was trying to achieve there. Looks like I was just trying to see where the hand was lining up with the gun, so I had to rework the arm just a little bit and mask off the hand and kind of get the elbow bent up a little bit more. Hands are always going to be like the most tedious part of posing, you know, there's just a lot of detail there with the fingers, and so just be ready for that. You get the hand just rotated like so, and then kind of pointing it down the barrel a little bit better, and then rotating and bending the middle ring and pinky fingers in. Just kind of showing you just the cleanup that you have to do sometimes. Just go back and clean out some of the new anatomy that you've introduced by doing this. And I guess like you could have taken the time to rig this and skin it, and maybe you're just a super fast rigger and you can handle all this stuff, but for me, if I'm just doing a figurine or just a 3D print, there's no way I'm going to go back to rigging for this. So this is just a super awesome pro tip, this whole transpose thing. Just a huge time saver. It's kind of nice to zoom out and see, you know, overall broadly how the forms are looking, so just be sure to do that. I think right here I get going on the arm placement and kind of get that up in place a little bit better. So showing here that you can, because you have a somewhat clean topology, you can do this thing called, like, you can click and drag along the geo. I'm demonstrating that a snake hook will cause you to manipulate all the geo around that area within the brush circle, and you don't necessarily want that sometimes. So the reason you want to have clean topology is so that when you click and left click and drag along the topology, you can actually mask it, and it kind of just magically finds the topology. And so that's a really that's like a super powerful tip inside ZBrush. If you do have a clean topology and you're doing this process, that's why you want a clean topology, is so that you can click and drag along the topology to mask that. And I feel like I'm saying topology way too much. But I've got the arm masked off now, and at this point you could have, I didn't think about this, but you could have polygrouped that whole arm so that then you have that as like a selection that you can just re-grab, and then you don't have to remask every time. But I think I show you that on the second arm. So I'm pulling out the elbow just a little bit more. I think it was just a little bit too tucked, and then raising the hand up a smidge. Just more cleanup. Just isolating the hand now so that we can get that working. And right here I kind of chose to be lazy and select all the fingers instead of like rotating them all one by one, which has its pros and its cons. One, you can be lazy and just do them all together, and then but with a con like that, obviously some of those fingers are going to not rotate properly, and the pinky's going to look a little stubby, and you kind of see that later on. But I'm using this tool right now, this brush called Anchors, and if you just click on this area, like you left click right here and you click a little joint and you click right there, you can just like rotate everything in. It's super cool. I've been playing around with this brush a lot more lately, and obviously it broke the pinky, as you'll see here. Pinky looks super squirrely. I think we broke that off basically. So it's just cleanup. You know, you just have to go back in and clean up, and it's worth it. I actually love that brush, so I'll use that pretty frequently. Again, that's the Anchor brush. And I'm just using Move Topological, which is one of my favorite brushes while doing this, to clean up the fingers, and then inflating them out, making sure that they're kind of touched and squished together. And then I kind of forget about the trigger finger. Trigger finger should not be squished like that. It should be straight. That's like proper form. So I'm gonna straighten out that finger here in a second. I'm just trying to bring back the joint structure and just smoothing stuff out. Fixing that pinky. So again, I was just control left clicking and dragging along the topology to isolate that finger. And then just sort of breaking that finger back into position. And it might not have been the best way to do it, but it ended up working. So it's just a lot of just smoothing and snake hook and Move Topological to get that back into place. Just rotating around frequently just to be able to see how it's deforming and where things are at. It's called trigger discipline for all you gun nerds out there. And the hand's pretty much in a good place. Just going to go through and clean up some of the wrist volume that we lost when we rotated things. It's inevitably going to happen. And then it's time to move on to the left arm. So actually, nope, I think I actually take some time to rotate the gun into place, because that was going to be easier rotating the gun into place than it would be to have to deal with all the fingers and everything again. So I just decided I'm going to have it kind of at like a low ready kind of a look instead of him aiming down the sights. Sinking that into his armpit a little bit more and just getting the hand position closer. Rotating that hand back out a little bit more. And then cleaning up the middle finger because it's in the trigger guard. A lot of this isn't being too nitpicky because, I mean, when you print this guy at scale, when he's real tiny, you're not going to even notice a lot of these details. So I'm just trying not to nitpick the fingers too much. This is where I'm kind of showing the difference in the Move Topological versus like the snake hook brush. You know, you can have neighboring topology within the brush circle and it won't be affected because it's only looking at the topology that you're directly moused over, if that makes any sense at all. But it's a pretty powerful brush. I don't think it gets enough recognition, so definitely find ways to use that in your workflow. All right, so now I think I'm ready to move on to the left arm. Again, just always looking back at our reference and seeing that the hands are actually kind of close together. The arm's not like straight out, it's kind of more bent, and his hand's got a nice grip on there, and that's kind of what I'm going to try to achieve. And I realize that the watch is included in the accessories polygroup, so I have to I have to individually polygroup that watch so I can include it with the arm work. It's kind of a headache. So just gonna click and send that back to the arm layer here, and then it's gonna be included with the stuff I want to work with. And then I just use mask lasso to lasso the arm. And I think I show right here that you can polygroup the arm. If you hit Control W, it'll polygroup just that arm. And now I can just have that polygroup control over that polygroup now, so that I can just rotate that guy easily and just isolate that arm easily. So if I think I show like, okay, so now it's all purple, and I just want to grab that guy and then quickly mask it off, I can do that fairly easily. If I can actually get it to, so when you're Control Shift left clicking on these and you click on an edge, it'll just, for whatever reason, it'll just hide that edge, or hide or unhide that edge, and it's super annoying. You have to be moused over a vert to Control Shift left click on, and then it'll isolate just that that polygroup. I wish the ZBrush would change that. So just positioning the joints now, rotating around, making sure that it's centered in the arm, shoulder area, and then trying to rotate his arm up to the rifle. And then just masking down to the elbow and getting that guy into place. And again, if you click that little white circle, the second orange circle, there's a little white one that shows up when you mouse over. That's going to rotate it on that Y axis. So it's kind of just a mix of grabbing both of those circles and getting everything into place. And just sculpting back some of the details and pulling his shoulder up a little bit and bringing back the point in his elbow. Don't shy away from the cleanup, everybody. And a lot of this you can do in the second part of this this step where you move everything back to your other Z tool. You can still make these adjustments. So it's actually a little bit easier with some of this stuff to be out of Transpose Master to make those changes. The old zoom out, don't forget to zoom out, look at the overall forms, and then I think right here I'm just like going to isolate the wrist and start to rotate the hand properly to be grabbing onto the rifle. So again, don't forget to Control left click and drag along those loops, because it's going to be a superpower for you. It's awesome. Centering the gizmo. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Oh, I'm just unmasking the watch completely, including that in that. And then just grabbing that inner white circle and rotating. And then cleaning up. And then just grabbing the hand and trying to include the watch in there, but it looks goofy. But it cleans up nice. So I ran an auto group there to get the watch into a separate group, and anything that's going to be a separate topology is going to be in its own group. So it's kind of nice to know. Again, this elbow needs some love. So we'll get to it though. running into that issue where you, for whatever reason, want to hide that loop, which is ridiculous. Wish they would just include that in the vert selection function so you could just make it happen. So just rotating the hand down and just trying to get that palm to make contact with the rifle. And then I'm going to do, I think, the same process here where I grab all the fingers and then rotate those up. Actually, I think I tried doing this using the anchor brush instead, which works pretty good. At least gives it a subtle bend. Rotating around to make sure things are working proper. And then I was going to try to achieve like a C-clamp here, so I was going to rotate the thumb up using the wrong tool. And then I have to clean it up with the snake hook brush. Hand's looking a little bit closer. You can see here it could definitely have a grip on the gun, and I think I decide ultimately to move. Yeah, I'm going to rotate the gun into place because that's going to be easier than rotating a bunch of fingers, and then I do the fingers anyway. But so we're just isolating the gun, resetting our transform gizmo at the back hand, and then just kind of repositioning the rifle to fit better. Just cleaning up the neck. I think the neck looks a little janky, and then I think I adjust the head position a little bit as well, and just kind of get him to duck down a little bit behind the sights. Right here I'm trying to show that you can use the mask brush, the mask pen tool, and drop your RGB intensity down a little bit to help feather your masks, which is a nice trick as well if you're trying to really just, you don't have to deal with cleanup as much and you want to just take some time to, I guess it would be comparable to skin weights, you know, kind of blur your skin weights if you're speaking Maya speak. So just ducking his head down. Ends up looking a little too hunched, but it is what it is. The tricky part about working in Transpose Master is you don't want to manipulate like all this hard surface stuff, and so I had to like mask out the gun, and then I could kind of like have the freedom of tucking the shoulder up into place and getting that behind the gun, and then just make sure that you have your poly groups and you can just easily select different things and mask different things easily. And then I try to clean up the hand a little bit right here. And again, you notice like I'm rotating around as much as I possibly can because it's that's another pro tip. You want to rotate around. Like if you're sculpting with clay, it's easy to just shift your weight and like get a different perspective on the sculpture. In 3D, it's easy to camp out in a certain camera angle, and you can see that reflected in the quality of people's work. It'll lose mass or volume, or it'll look super weird when you rotate it around. So just make a conscious effort to rotate a lot as frequently as you can, and that alone I think will increase the quality of your work substantially. Still just trying to get the fingers into place. Zooming out to look at the big forms, see how everything's looking. And then right here I think I take like a broad snake hook to the leg to kind of, I like to just use the snake hook and scale it way up. And if you double click on that little dynamic button right there till it's turned off, you can actually scale it up more. It's weird how it works. I don't like it. But if you turn off the dynamic button and then you can actually scale way larger. Like my character right now is about 6 inches tall in real world scale, and I guess that's big for ZBrush scale. So now I'm just pulling his foot out and just kind of making his stance a little more dynamic. And then trying to fix, I think his foot looks a little broke, so I fixed that. And forward and backward with the lead foot. And just kind of doing broad strokes. And then I think I mask him at the waist, and then I rotate him down to kind of give him a like lean forward a little bit more. Lean into that rifle a little bit more. And then I think I learned that his head is too cocked down, and so I remask that at the neck, and then kind of lift his head up a little bit. Blur the mask by control left clicking and tapping. And then bring his head back up a little bit. And then from here, this is where we send everything back to our original subtool. So we still have our original subtool here. We have our new subtool created by the Transpose master. And in order to take all of this work back to our old subtool, you click on there and go to Transpose master and do T-pose by sub T. Click on that button, and it'll send everything back to our original subtool and re-inherit all of our subdivision levels and all of our high-res work, and it'll all just magically be there. It's pretty awesome. This can take a while depending on the poly count of the subtools, so just kind of be patient. It takes a while on the gear and also the gun. So now everything is in, and I kind of just show you like that we still have, you know, the high-res subdivision levels on the shirt are still there. Everything is still there. Our history is all still there. And then I do a save as and save it now as, you know, the pose name of that rifleman as opposed to, you know, T-pose or whatever. So always version up, always change the name at this point, so you're not overwriting your last, your T-pose subtool. So now we've got the character, you know, roughly posed in a low ready standing aiming pose, and I'm just kind of doing a little bit of cleanup on the clothing. You notice like my detailing is pretty intense, and I did that intentionally because when you print this at scale at like 6 inches or whatever, that detail is not going to pop nearly as much as what you're seeing right here. So one thing I would always encourage when you're sculpting for miniatures, emphasize your texturing detail as much as you can. And then that's really gonna pop when it's printed at scale. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just fixing the straps here too, and just trying to get those in place in the shoulder when I moved it, and cleaning up. And I'm probably gonna keep noodling with this pose and just like really refine it, make it perfect. And like notice when you get to the high-res stuff, you can see like the nails have been stretched and the knuckle detail has been stretched, and so you always have to go back and kind of clean that up a little bit. Just be aware that's part of the fun. It's a big old long hot dog finger there. And then I learned for fun that my fingers weren't quite squeezing that rifle enough, so I take some time with the Transpose to continue to... I actually use the anchors brush, I guess, for this. And then snake hook. In hindsight, I probably should have taken more time to really squish those up against that make him kind of flex into the rifle. He's really got a death grip on that. Like I said, posing hands is tedious and hard, but it's fun. It's also very fun. So dragging my mask up the knuckle a little bit more so we're not bending all the way at the back knuckle, or the last knuckle there. And then I think I do a little bit of an inflate. Yeah. Sort of just cleaning up the joints and fixing some of the details still. All detail work. Again, just remember to step up your subdivs to see what's been stretched where, because it's always a little bit, it's always easy to forget. Just showing there too that you can use masking to kind of isolate certain areas so it doesn't manipulate like neighboring topology. So overall, I think that's good for now. We got the pose pretty much where we want it. I'm probably going to noodle on this forever, indefinitely, but for our purposes, that's how you go through Transpose and Zbrush. So if you like this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what I can do better. Thanks for watching.